Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hello there. Thank you for joining me again this week for another episode of the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. Strategies to live more consciously with time, money, and yes, life itself. Thank you so much for spending your time with me and my guests every week, and for just being, one of the people on this planet that's so committed to creating a conscious world. It's what I'm passionate about. It's what I love to do. And I love having people in my life who are also committed to that. It's one of the things I love about doing this podcast is that I get to speak with people every week who have committed not only their lives, but also their careers to raising consciousness on the planet. So today I'm more than honored and really just so pleased to bring to the Conscious Living Podcast Sam Liebowitz, who is, who is he? He is a conscious consultant. He's the founder of his company is called The Conscious Consultant. He's also the executive producer of a radio show that he runs weekly, I believe, that I'll be on a little bit later this year. I'm looking forward to that. So, Sam, you are, I just remember when you and I first met, we were introduced through a mutual friend of ours. And when we first met, I don't know, I think we talked for like over an hour and it felt like it was 5 minutes. I feel like we're, twins from different mothers or something. We have so much in common of our shared passion for raising consciousness on the planet. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here with us. Do you mind saying a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, and what led you to become a conscious consultant?
Oh, thank you so much, Jackie. I really appreciate you having me on your podcast and give me a chance to talk to your audience. And yes, when we met that first time, I says, there's a sister from another mister for sure.
There you go.
So who is Sam Liebowitz? Well, I always like to say I'm a nice Jewish boy from the Bronx. I'm a native New Yorker, and I'm just an everyday kind of guy who had a lot of unusual experiences during my life. And probably about 20 years ago, got put back on my spiritual path. But it wasn't like, I'm going to go be a spiritual teacher or help people or do this stuff. I actually just started getting back into personal development, which led me to go to like a bunch of these healing workshops, learning these different healing modalities. And I never imagined that me, a healer? What are you talking about? But, you start taking these workshops. I was doing them for my own healing. And then one day, there's that one workshop where you learn some new modality, they pair you up, and I helped this woman release a condition she had had since she was 6 years old. And when that happened, like the light bulb went off, and it's like, like this isn't just for me. I can use this to help other people. But I'm like, what do I do with that? I'm a business guy. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a coach and consultant. What do you do with this? And I just sat with it and was just trying to be present with it. And then kind of through meditation, it sort of dropped in. Well, you're still a consultant. You're just a different kind of consultant now. And so because I'd become a Reiki master practitioner and I learned half a dozen different energy healing modalities, I really had developed my intuition, my sense, my feeling for energy. So I started to shift my business coaching practice. I've started many businesses, and I used to even teach a workshop of how to start your own small business. And so I kind of shifted from focusing like most people do on strategy and tips to really working with people, looking at what's the underlying energetic pattern that's happening here. Like there's this presenting issue or problem either in your career or your business. And more than likely, if you're having some kind of issue there, you're also having some kind of issue elsewhere in life. So I would work with the client to feel, ask questions, feel into their answers of what's really going on underneath the surface. And then when I kind of hit upon it, then I give them practices and exercises and homework and things to do to help to unwind that energetic knot. And inevitably, what would happen is not only would that particular challenge or issue start to dissolve, but then they'd tell me, oh, my relationship with my dad got better. Oh, my relationship with my wife got better. My relationship with my kids got better. And so it's a very sort of holistic approach because when we look at sort of the core of what challenges we have, it's usually affecting us many different ways, not just with one aspect of life.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me more about energy healing, Sam. And you said you've got certified, I think you said in a number of different energy
Hmm.
healing
Hmm.
practices. What is that? How do you heal one's energy, or how do you use energy to heal?
Well, I mean, energetic healing is as old as civilization, older than civilization itself. It's something that's been handed down generation to generation. And, I for people who are like, what are you talking about healing energy or using energy to help heal? I always use the example of like, have you ever gone to a party or walked into the room where there's a group of people and someone just had an argument before you got there and you walk in and you could kind of feel the tension in the room, right?
Yeah,
That's the energy. That's
yeah.
that interaction. We've all had that. Or maybe someone just made a joke and everyone was just laughing and you walk in and it feels real light. And so energy, these subtle fields, and people talk about this all the time that everything is energy. There were the back in 2022 or 2023, I think 2022, there were two physicists who won the Nobel Prize who proved that the universe is not locally real. So what does that mean? There's this principle in physics um, whereby you can whereby sort of matter is in a state is in a wave state until it's observed and then it collapses down to a particle and acts like a particle. And they've done experiments over and over about this. They've proved this a million times over. So what does that mean? That means that on a very, very, very fundamental level, that that waves of energy is the fundamental nature of the universe. And Einstein proved this. There's a very simple equation, right? What is Einstein's most famous equation that everybody knows?
E equals mc squared.
Exactly. Let's take that formula apart. E, energy equals m, mass, times c squared. C is the speed of light. Let's just call that some really huge number. Now, basic high school algebra, if you divide one side by a constant, the other side by a constant, you get an equivalent equation, which means that m, mass or matter, equals E, energy, divided by c squared, or some really huge number, which means all matter is energy that's just vibrating at a very low speed. And in fact, if we take an electron microscope and we look at the chair I'm sitting in, the desk my computer is sitting on, any solid piece of furniture, it is 99% empty space. And of that 0.1% non-empty space, which are these little particles, atoms, protons, neutrons, electrons, if we keep breaking them up and breaking them up down to the smallest level that we're able to at this point in time see, we get down to a quantum level, and then it's not a discrete little particle, it's a possibility wave. It's an energetic wave. So when it comes to energy healing, what we're doing is we're working with these very subtle energies and we're using our sensitivity. And they've proven already, scientists have proven that the cells in our body have little antenna or little cilia on the edges that actually send and receive photons, which are basically light. So we tend to think of ourselves as these discrete individual beings. But if you talk to someone who comes from an indigenous culture, like the Maori in Australia, or some of the indigenous cultures in Africa or South America, they actually see the interconnection of life, and they see the energy going from one person to another. They don't see us as so separate and distinct and individual. We're all interrelated. We're all interconnected, like this flower of life symbol behind me.
Beautiful.
So when it comes to energy, you're working on just these very subtle things that actually can have a very deep and very profound effect.
But how are you able to, again, in energy healing, how does the practitioner work with the energy? So I'm assuming it's working with the energy to create healing. Is that accurate?
I would view it slightly differently.
Okay, yeah.
It's more tapping into the energy of the person's true essence, which is already perfect, healed, and whole. So an energy practitioner doesn't heal anybody, but maybe realigns them back to the energy of wholeness or neutrality. And like I remember seeing this video of this Buddhist monk in China who came into this room. This woman was there who had a tumor on her liver, I believe it was. And he would just sit there. He didn't talk to her at all. He just chanted for like 15 minutes. And they were doing this, some kind of MRI, and they literally watched the tumor shrink until it disappeared.
Wow.
And when they interviewed him afterwards and they said, "What did you do? What you were chanting?" And he says, "Oh, I was just seeing them as the whole and complete being and healthy being that they are in their essence and their true nature." And so that monk just held that vision so powerfully that that person's body aligned with that perfect imprint that we all are energetically, and then physically it responded to that.
So what was it about that monk? I've read that. I've read that same thing, actually.
Hmm.
Um, what was it about that monk? I just, I just want to break this down. So like, really, we could say nothing happened, right? He didn't go into
Right,
the scalpel. She didn't
right,
get put under.
right,
She didn't have radiation. You know,
right.
you could essentially say nothing happened.
Hmm.
A gentleman went into a room and chanted,
Hmm.
and held a thought,
Hmm.
his consciousness
Hmm.
that we could say created a physical outcome.
Hmm.
So a non-physical action, uh, or consciousness, a non-physical action or consciousness caused a physical outcome.
Right.
So, so Sam, what was that? I don't know, if I sat in the room,
Uh-huh.
chanted, would the same thing have happened if we went up to the
Probably not.
coffee shop? Yeah, if we went up to the coffee shop and grabbed three people out of line and put them
Yeah,
in the room.
right.
So what, so explain that as best to your understanding.
To the best of my understanding, that Buddhist monk knew that seeing was not believing. That Buddhist monk, who had been practicing the meditation and Buddhist practices for decades, had achieved a state of awareness that he could see the truth that's beyond the physical reality that you and I live in.
Mm.
And because he could see that with his mind's eye, he had the presence to call that in and and reconnect that person to that actual truth.
And what you're saying is the truth. You've said this a couple of times, the truth
Mm,
of her divine. nature. Am I getting that?
Yes.
Mhm.
Because the truth is we're not broken. We don't need to be fixed. That our essential nature is one that's whole and pure and healthy and joyful. And that anything that is not that, there's some form of active resistance against it that's preventing that from happening. As an example, if you look at a bunch of children in a playground, they are happy and joyful and running around and screaming and yelling. Their natural state is joy. And they only start crying and yelling and hurting when something tells them to resist that natural state. And so that's why spiritual practices can be so profound, that when we keep connecting back to that natural state, it helps us to bring that energy into our day-to-day life.
So good. Yeah.
Now, I've studied with a lot of different teachers over the years, people who taught spiritual ascension and mystery schools and all this stuff. And it's a very common idea among sort of spiritual teachers that the idea is you practice these spiritual practices to increase your vibration and your energy level so that at the end of your life, you don't have to come back and reincarnate. And because, if you're stuck in the cycle of reincarnation, like that's somehow suffering. I have a very different view of that now after what I've lived through in the last 15, 20 years, that I actually believe that life is beautiful. Life can be wonderful. And that these spiritual practices are to help us to connect to these higher energies so that we can descend them down through our bodies, our actions, our words, our choices, so that we can create a heaven on earth, that we can create a beautiful life, not just for ourselves and everyone around us. And if you ever talk to anybody who's meditated with these monks or these very gurus from India, just being in their presence and just being still is like feeling like you've just lifted some burden that you didn't even know you were carrying.
Yeah. You just said something really interesting. I've used the same phrases, the same language, but it struck me when you said it. These energies descending,
Mm.
but aren't they everywhere?
They are. It
What did
it's
what did you mean by that?
so there's this idea behind sort of spiritual ascending is to ascend and get up and out of this physical world. You hear people throw around these terms like 4D, 5D, 12D, to get to these quote unquote higher dimensions. And I have no doubt that these higher dimensions and that there are entities that live in these higher dimensions. But it's like we're in this quote unquote 3D, three-dimensional world. And it's like if we are just either good enough people or we practice our spirituality, that we'll be able to go beyond this physical world to some higher plane of existence. And so I'm kind of feeling like it's not about escaping this physical world, but it's about bringing this higher level of awareness down into this physical world so that we can live more consciously, live more compassionately, live more generously, live in a more trusting manner, live with greater presence so that we can actually enjoy all the juiciness of life, that we can enjoy just sitting and having a cup of coffee or tea at a cafe and watch people and feel the movement, or sit on a beach and in some beautiful location, or just feel the beauty of a mob of people walking down the street and all the different flavors and all the different colors of the tapestry. That there's so much juiciness here in life that's enjoyable, that actually bringing these energies down is about learning to not escape when things don't feel so good, to not escape our pain, but to honor our pain and our grief and our loss in a way that helps us to feel more alive.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, a lot of people look at healing as like, oh, I've got to get rid of this thing inside of me that's causing me anguish. And I'm more like, well, how about if we just look at that thing that's causing us anguish and show it love and compassion, and hold it tenderly, and not look at it as something to get rid of, but something that helps to inform our life, that helps us to make living life more enjoyable because we can appreciate the good stuff because we have the contrast of the things that didn't feel so good.
Mm. Yeah. You and I both teach that life itself is the best medium for your spiritual growth.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
But, you know, I've heard people say, and I really do believe in it, that like everything can be a spiritual practice, and not necessarily is. Depends on the mindfulness we bring to it. But like the most basic thing, just being in a relationship, and it doesn't matter whether it's an intimate relationship, a partnership, a friendship, a business relationship, working colleagues. Relationships can be a little challenging. Yeah. I mean, does everyone think like maybe relationships might have their challenges? So that is a great place to practice, to make our relationships a spiritual practice. That when we get triggered by something, that maybe it's not about the other person, but it's something within us that's calling for healing.
Yeah.
And so instead of looking at an incident where we get upset at something as something bad, that like, ooh, 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 this just like gave me some breadcrumbs that I can follow, that can show me, where I can do deeper work, and actually get excited about it, get curious about it. Now, look, is this easy to do? Is this something that like just tomorrow we can just make a quick decision and say, okay, that's it. From now on, I'm never going to be triggered? No, of course not. It's a practice, which means we have to practice at it. It takes time, effort. But if we make that effort, and if we choose to be more mindful in this way, the rewards are tremendous.
Yeah, let's talk a little about that. I was thinking that, like, this sounds like a lot of work. Why bother? So let's talk about
Yeah.
the rewards of using every area of your life as an opportunity to grow in consciousness. So
Yeah.
what's the
And
reward of that?
and and this path is not for everyone. And there are moments on this path when you can actually feel worse than when you started.
Oh, sure.
Because when you started, you were probably numb to a lot of things. So there's probably a lot of stuff you weren't feeling. And then as you start doing this work and unraveling stuff, you start feeling more. And then you start feeling the pain and the fear and the loss more. And you're like, oh my God, why am I doing this? I feel worse than I did before I started doing this. Yet if we stay the course and we keep going, then these layers start to peel away. We find more peace within ourselves. We find more value within ourselves, more confidence, and we start just feeling better being in our own skin.
Mhm.
And then suddenly we're not living life to prove ourselves to anybody. We're not living life to get back at anybody for what they did. We're living life from a more centered, more joyful, more present place within us. And then the old adage that everything we need is within us, we start to realize that's actually true. And then we stop running around to all these seminars and workshops and looking for something outside of us to fix us. we actually feel like we're not broken and we don't need to be fixed.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that feeling is better than almost anything else.
Yeah. That's beautiful, Sam. And I know you're really committed, to this whole notion of raising consciousness. What are some of your favorite and helpful practices that help you live life more consciously?
Well, there are two things lately that I really recommend to people to focus on. And especially because of the way society is getting, the first and foremost, take more time. Slow down. The pace of change is increasing almost daily.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The life around us is really speeding up tremendously. So it's more important than ever to take some space, not to respond to a question right away, not to feel like you have to do everything this instant, but to just create some space so that when you do go to engage with something, you can engage with it more mindfully. And then the second thing is one of the best ways to do that is to focus on our breath.
Hmm.
It's so simple and so many people talk about it and it may seem trite at times, but it really is so powerful. Just remembering to take a deep breath before you're about to do something. One of my teachers once said, it's being mindful of how you are about to engage in something really sets the tone for that thing. And what is that thing? It could be a business meeting, it could be sitting down and having dinner, it could be going to the gym, it could be anything. Because anytime we go to take a certain action, we go to do something, we're entering into a relationship with that thing. And so if we can just take some time to pull back for a moment before we enter into that relationship, to think about, well, what's our intention? Why am I doing this? What do I want to get out of it? How do I want to feel when I'm going through it? Just taking a minute or two to do that helps to line up our energy with what we actually want to create. And then that, you know, helps us to create a much more mindful, conscious life.
Cool. I love that. Slowing down and taking a breath. Such simple things, right, Sam? Such simple
Absolutely.
things, and how we can choose. We can't always choose or create every experience of our life. I'm sorry, every circumstance of our lives.
hmm
We can always create the experience of our lives.
hmm
Regardless
Yes.
of the circumstances, we are the author of our own experience, and that
Yeah.
is a beautiful path to conscious living.
Yeah. I mean, I always say to people, look, like life is so complex. We have absolutely zero control
Yeah.
over the things that come to us and what happens to us. But we have 100% control over how we choose to respond to it. But in order to have 100% control over how we respond to it, it takes being mindful. It takes giving ourselves some space because our nervous system does not operate at the speed of a computer. Our nervous system needs time to feel its way into whatever we're about to do. So taking some time and space is the most important thing we can do in today's world.
Yeah, I actually don't think everyone can choose their response to things, because when people are conditioned, and if you can't interrupt the preconditioning, you will have automatic responses that are just generated from a fried nervous system.
Mhm.
So there are instances where people just go off the handle, or and then they look back and I wish I would have, I should have,
Mhm.
but you can develop the capacity to be
Exactly.
to
The
be
the
100%.
potential is always there.
Potential is always there, and you have the capacity, and that is the path of conscious living, to develop the
Yes.
capacity to always choose how you're going to respond. So
Yeah.
really, really beautiful. So Sam, what kind of people do you work with? Is it just companies? Is it businesses? Who do you work with as a conscious consultant?
Oh, well, for me, it always comes down to individuals, right? It's either they're small business owners, solopreneurs, maybe they have a mid-sized business, and it could be executives who work within an organization. But I typically don't engage with on a company level, though I'm more than happy to consider it. If there's someone who has a company and they want to bring me in and work with their employees, I'm more than happy to consider that, and we can talk about what that would look like. But it's usually more an individual who's stuck, who's like tried different things and nothing seems to work for them, or just someone who, for whatever reason, I resonate with them. I'm a big believer that there are plenty of people out there,
Yeah.
and that, we don't have to be the person for everyone to come to. We're here to work with the people who resonate with us and who we resonate with. And so because I've been a small business owner for, such a huge part of my life, that's usually the people who tend to come to me.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for sharing your thoughts about being conscious, creating a conscious life, consciously co-creating our experience of life. It's really just, it's really lovely to be with you. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to find you?
So my website is The Conscious Consultant, that's singular.com. And my email address is sam@theconsciousconsultant.com. And I also have an online radio show that I do every week on Thursdays at noon Eastern Time at TalkRadio.NYC. It's called The Conscious Consultant Hour, oddly enough.
Right. I love that. Well, I love being conscious with you, Sam. I love our time together. So thank you for being here with us on the Conscious Living Podcast.
Same here, Jack, and I look forward to having you on my show.
I'm looking forward to it.